Hello everyone and welcome back to Strike Zone with St. Paul Saints Manager George Tsamis. Strike Zone is a weekly program that gives you, the fans, the opportunity to ask the St. Paul Manager questions about the Saints, baseball or sports in general, or just seek George's wisdom about life events that are going on. In this week's episode, George talks to us about what it's like to manage a team owned by Mike Veeck and Bill Murray. He shares with us his insights about Kevin Hooper and his involvement with the San Diego Padres. And does George believe that the New England Patriots being given the odds of winning the Super Bowl next year is an ample pick? Well, let's get right to Strike Zone and find out. Well, let's welcome back Manager George Tsamis this week. George, let's first of all begin with team updates you have for us.
Yes, sorry to disappoint. We have no player signings to announce today, but things have picked up here, and we're hoping to have a few here when we talk next week at this time, but it's just there's nothing to announce right now, but there has been some progress made on some things.
Well, that's excellent to hear. Are you anticipating then that signings will get much closer to occurring after spring training has kind of gotten underway for you?
Yeah, like I said, I think with big league camp starting right about now, and then the minor league camp starting in a couple weeks. I think the players that are maybe not getting into anybody's spring training are starting to realize that they're not getting in, and they're going to want to play, and they're going to need a job, and so that's when they really start coming. Right around the beginning of March is when players that didn't get into spring training are looking, and then obviously the end of March with all the releases, that's when it's a free for all on the players, and everybody's after them, and you do the best you can to get them to come to your place.
I know you've talked about on several occasions that you're battling against all the other independent teams, not only here in the American Association, but across the country, Frontier League and Atlantic League. Do you find that at this time that players are reaching out to all of those teams, or they're just kind of wanting to see if they can find a spot in St. Paul?
Definitely the players that are coming out of organizations. I mean, they probably don't really know too much about the independent leagues or our place, and unless they've heard it from a buddy that's played for us. It's AA, AAA guys, the big league guys. It's in most cases they just go where the most money is without doing their homework and knowing what the best places are. And when I try to get a player, I tell them about our place, about our beautiful stadium, and I tell them, why I feel St. Paul is the best place to play. But I'm sure you have every other manager telling them that about their place. So, the one thing that's tough too when we compete with the Atlantic League for players, I mean, their season starts the last week of April, so that's a few weeks before ours, and that's something that's, I don't know if there's any way around it. It's just tough when because players, when they're sitting at home or they get released, they don't want to sit there and wait till the middle of May to play. If somebody's telling them they can go play at the end of April, a lot of guys decide that's what they want to do. So that is a tough part of it, competing with the Atlantic League, because they start before we do.
Well, let's begin with our fan questions this week. We start with Jimmy from Lino Lakes, who'd like to know, how does spring training work for your team? He would assume that players come in shape and ready to play.
Yeah, they absolutely have to be ready to go when they come in, and it's a 12-day spring training we have. And in that time, in those 12 days, we have 5 or 6 exhibition games. So it's not like, you're there to get ready. You need to be ready when you get there, especially the guys that are coming in trying to win a job. They need to be ready to go, and because, again, it's not that long of a spring training. It's the 12 days, and be ready to play.
Brad from Stillwater asks of you, Mike Veeck and Bill Murray are such characters. What is it like to have them as owners of the team?
They're great. They're great to work with. They're great to hang out with. Mike Veeck's obviously, he's been very successful, knows what he's doing for a long, long time, but a funny guy. And same with Bill Murray. The few times that he's been out and got to meet him and, little batting practice to him and hang out with him by the batting cage and in the locker room. And he's just the way you see him on TV, that's exactly the way he is. He's just a real good, funny guy, and we're very lucky to have them, to be able to work for those guys.
I think people forget that both of them love baseball too.
Absolutely, yes they do, and they want to win, and they do a very good job. So we need to put the best possible team out there for them and for the fans, and do the best we can to bring home a championship.
Lewis from Detroit Lakes would like to know from you, which of your players signed by affiliate clubs do you see as having the best shot of making it into the majors this season?
That's a tough thing. You just don't know. I mean, obviously Vinny had a great year, and Sonko had a great year, and Phillips is an excellent shortstop, and Zuzalek, with that 92 to 94 mile per hour fastball. I don't know. I don't know who even has the best chance to stick with the organization. You hope all four of them do, but I guess it depends what kind of shape they come in and go there, and hopefully they get the opportunity. And it'd be nice if all four of them could start the season in Double-A, and then just after that, you just never know what's going to happen.
I would think that, looking at what usually teams need, that Zuzalek is probably in the best situation just because relief pitchers are such a hot commodity for teams. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, no, they're tough to find. They are tough to find, but you will find though in the Double-A, Triple-A level that there are quite a few pitchers that throw 92, 93, 94 miles per hour.
Gabe from Circle Pines would like to know from you. George, he says he's curious about how effective shifts are for playing defense.
Yeah, it's sometimes you got to play the percentages, and if you have a lefty hitter up that's pulls the ball out, you just do what you feel is right. Some people agree with the shifts, some people don't, but at times it works, and even if they don't hit it into the shift, sometimes you get in the hitter's head too. Maybe he'll try to go the other way and hit a lazy fly ball, and if he pulls the ball a lot, I personally feel it's the right thing to put the shift on.
Adam from Kansas City would like to know, how much influence do you think Kevin Hooper will have with the Padres?
Kevin Hooper, they made a great choice with him, and he's going to do an outstanding job for them. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the big leagues in the next 2 years, because he's very knowledgeable, he's very good at what he does, and very happy for him because he's one of the good guys in the game. Absolutely.
Mary from St. Paul asks, she says she knows you're a big fantasy football fan, but she wants to know if you play fantasy baseball as well, and if you do, she's playing for the first time this year and she'd like help constructing her team.
I have, but I'm the wrong guy to ask. I don't want to give bad advice. I guess what? It's like a regular baseball team. You better have some good pitching. You better have some good hitting. You better have some guys that can steal some bases. So, I guess the defense doesn't really matter too much in fantasy baseball, but you better have the good pitching, and some guys that can steal some bases as well.
I think you've talked on the show a couple of times about how starting in May, you don't even have time to watch Major League Baseball because you're kind of focused in on your own team. So.
Yeah, you don't get to see too many games, and once in a while you do. You do see them, but I'm more concerned about our team, and honestly, that's the team that I care about that wins is our team.
Jeremy from Bloomington would like to know, who has impressed you the most this off season in baseball?
A lot of teams have done some good things. It looks like the Cubs have put together a good team, and the Giants, looks like they've made some nice additions as well too. So, but you know what? On paper, it doesn't really mean anything. Anybody can look good on paper and say this team's going to do this team's going to do that, and it really doesn't matter what they look like on paper. They got to go out and do it. And, I think last year at this time we were talking about how great the Padres looked on paper, and they weren't a factor. So you just don't know. You got to go out there and get the job done.
Absolutely. Chet from St. Paul has an interesting question for you. He says, George, I'm curious about something. I know conventional wisdom says that a lefty is tougher on a lefty hitter and a righty on a righty hitter, but does that stuff really matter, or is that just made-up logic?
No, it matters. That's just one thing in baseball. It's even a hard thing to explain. It's just they bring those. If a lefty has that good curveball, that good slider can come in and get lefties, you're going to be around for a while. And remember when I pitched, with me being left-handed, but I was the opposite. I couldn't get lefties out. I had a lousy curveball. I couldn't get them out. And, more successful against the righties. So if you're a lefty out there and you can throw strikes and have that good breaking ball, you have a chance in this game.
Steve would like to know from you, do you think having baseball writers select the Hall of Fame inductees is right, or would you choose another process?
Honestly, I really haven't really thought about this one. Like I said, I really don't follow that too closely, and what it takes to get in there. I just know that Ken Griffey should have got in and should have been unanimous, and I guess 3 people did not vote for him. So maybe those 3 people shouldn't be allowed to vote. That'll be my answer to that question.
For real. Mike from Minneapolis asks, he reads a bunch of places that Byron Buxton is the top prospect in baseball this season. Do you think he will be a big star for the Twins?
From what I hear and what I read about him, and he's going to be a great player for a long time, and I've never seen him play or anything, but it would be great if he turned out to be somebody like Mike Trout, for example, who's been a top prospect, and we see what he can do, and Bryce Harper, and from what you hear about Buxton, that he's going to be the real thing, and you hope it works out that way, and you hope he's playing for the Twins for a long time and is one of the top players in the game eventually.
Boy, a lot of speed for that young man too. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully it works out, because you know what, he's going to be a big key. He'll be a big key to their success. So hopefully it does work out with him, and it helps them get to a World Series.
Heading to our NFL questions, Glenn would like to know, he says that the Patriots, Panthers, and Steelers were given the best odds by Las Vegas to win the Super Bowl next season, which is 8-1. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, it's tough at this time of the year to even guess. And it's funny that the Broncos aren't in there because their defense is pretty good. But, it's just with all the stuff that goes on in the offseason and players change teams, I don't really think it's I think it's way too early to see who's going to be in the Super Bowl.
So you're not predicting your team back there in the Super Bowl next season?
Nope, not predicting, but you know what? I'm going to go with, let's hope it's the Vikings against the Patriots. That's what I'm pulling for.
All right.
Like I do every time we talk about it.
Zach from Minneapolis.
Hey, you know what would be, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You know what would be nice, though? It would be nice if, I know the Super Bowl's in Minneapolis in the new stadium there in 2 years. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to have the home team playing in their own stadium in a Super Bowl. And there's no reason why it can't happen. Great coach, great defense, a real good quarterback, for the Vikings, and if they can just get a little bit better, and maybe we'll be seeing them playing in the Super Bowl in their own stadium. That would be a great thing. And then you can get us tickets, and then we'll go.
Absolutely. I think that there's never been a home team that actually played in the Super Bowl, if I remember correctly. Because I think when Dallas opened up their new park, they were trying to see if they would wind up being the first, and then the Packers wound up getting in that Super Bowl against Pittsburgh. And but I don't think that's ever occurred. So Minnesota could be first. Our next question comes from Zach from Minneapolis, who asks, how do you feel about Cam Newton flaunting how great he was all season, but when his team loses in the Super Bowl, he acted like kind of a baby? Man up, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he's been taking some heat for it, I guess. And again, he's all year when he scored those touchdowns, and, he loves playing the game. And, again, he didn't handle it the right way, but like I said last week about it, I understand, it's tough to, when you just lost the Super Bowl and you're obviously upset about it, and again, he didn't handle it the right way, but I understand what he was, why he did what he did.
Another interesting question for you comes from Charlie from Bloomington, who says, Skipper, one thing I don't understand is why some clubs always seem to be so bad. The Browns, Lions, and others just never seem to turn things around. How does that happen when these teams get good players like Calvin Johnson?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and like the Lions were in the playoffs last year, but I don't know. The Browns, it has been a struggle for a long time for them, and and it just seems like when is it ever going to turn around? I don't know. I guess you could use some good breaks here and there, but just some teams just haven't been able to get it done.
I know that there was a break that the Browns had when they had moved to Baltimore, and then they built the new club again. But I don't think they've made the playoffs since those 2 years they got their hearts broken by the Broncos. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, it's tough to. It's really tough to succeed. Year to year, you just never know what's going to happen. Like we talked about before, a team can look good on paper, and like I said, even the Lions, they've had supposedly a real good quarterback, a great receiver, and just hasn't worked out for them. And sometimes it's just weird how the game works. You can look good, but maybe some silly mistakes. Guys make silly mistakes and cost their team, and it just hasn't worked out.
Our next question comes from Travis from Plymouth. He says he found it interesting that the media were talking about that the Broncos would either have to franchise Brock Osweiler or Von Miller. If you were John Elway, who would you make sure you held on to?
I would have to say Von Miller would be the guy. He is just so quick, and so he makes a difference. And obviously, I know you need to have a good quarterback, but I don't think I would be letting Von Miller go.
No, he's just too dominant a linebacker to let out of there, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Jan from Minneapolis asks, is your daughter back in softball, and how good is her team this year?
Yeah, she's back pitching again for Emerson College there in Boston, and I don't know how good they're going to be. Their season starts in a couple weeks down in Florida, so I'm going to go down there and see a week of it, and hopefully they have a good team, and because, as you know, it's more fun when you win than it is when you lose.
Yeah, yes, it is. Is this like a tournament that she's in, or is this like start of the regular season kind of thing?
Yeah, it's start of the regular season, but it's obviously with the weather being lousy up, at this time up here in the Northeast, they go down to Florida every year and start it off. And I know a lot of other teams do that in Minnesota too. I believe Hamlin goes to Arizona every year to play, and so it's just starting the season, but trying to start it in some nicer weather.
Our last question for the week comes from Amy from St. Paul. It says, Skipper, I have heard you speak up for quite a few television shows here on the program, but never for The Walking Dead. Come on, you have to be pro-zombie.
I've heard of the show. I don't know anything about it. I can tell you one person on there, and I've heard it's nice, but I have no clue. I have no clue about the show. So
you're not pro-zombie?
No, I don't know anything about it. So I hope people took my advice a couple weeks ago and get your Netflix on and just start from the Blacklist from the first episode of season 1, and you'll never stop watching. And they'll keep you busy too in those snowy days.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us this week, George. We want to thank Manager George Tsamis for joining us on Strike Zone this week. If you have your own questions you'd like to ask the St. Paul Saints manager, please send them to us at AskGeorge@minorleaguesportsreport.com. That's AskGeorge@minorleaguesportsreport.com. Please have your questions to us by Sunday evening so we can give the skipper a little time to review them before we record the show on Monday. We want to thank you for joining us again this week. I'm Rob Pannier, the managing editor of the Minor League Sports Report, and we'll look for you next week on Strike Zone.